What is up, guys? So yesterday's Entertainment Weekly cover shoot also came with some interviews with the showrunners as well as main actors of the Arrowverse shows, meaning Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow. Also Batwoman, I'm pretty sure, but I don't really care about that. But in this video, I'll be going over the show that had actually the most revealed about it, which is The Flash. It kind of revealed the structure of the season, as well as potentially ruling out certain main villains, or villains we thought were going to be main villains, and they bring up more possibilities for who the main villain can be, at least just comic book characters. So with that in mind, let's start the video with just all the details. First thing they said is that The Flash typically runs on three things: humor, spectacle, and heart. And while Season 4 was more on humor, Season 5 was more on spectacle, Season 6 is apparently going to be more on heart. Now, I don't agree that Season 5 is more on spectacle. I think that Season 4, more than any season, visually and with the powers, it's a lot more on spectacle than anything else, especially like episodes with like an Enter Flash time. But if they're going more on heart in Season 6, then I'm glad, because I think that's what they did in Season 1, and hopefully any season in The Flash can be as good, or maybe nearly as good as Season 1. The second thing they revealed is that Season 6 will begin seconds after Season 5 ends, so right after the ending of the newspaper changing to 2019, right after Barry and Iris watching that message from Nora, that's where Season 6 will begin, and Barry and Iris will deal with Nora's death throughout the season. The season taking place seconds after the last season end is not something new. They did the same thing last season where Season 4 ended, Season 5 began right after that, which I don't really like when they do that, mostly because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the Arrowverse. Like, I don't have a problem with them doing that in terms of story-wise, in terms of their own show, but last season it didn't really make much sense that in Elseworlds that the Flash was in the same time as Oliver and Supergirl, because they had breaks while the Flash didn't. So I'm hoping in this new season, either the Flash has a break between its episode right before the crossover and the crossover, or more likely Arrow, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and Batwoman, or Batwoman doesn't count. Maybe those other shows don't have breaks either, so that they can all fit within the same time period, instead of the Flash just being a couple months behind, like it did last season, and just not making much sense. In terms of Barry and Iris dealing with Nora's death, I mean, that was obvious. They took an emotional toll on them in the finale. Their daughter from the future came back, and then a year later was erased from existence, so that means she's never going to be born. That's definitely something they have to deal with in the season, and I don't think they should gloss over it either. I definitely think it should be a pretty major plot point in the season, Barry and Iris moving forward from their daughter being erased from existence, maybe having more kids, because in the comics they do have twins, the Tornado Twins, so maybe they can do that here as well, and obviously Nora's never going to be born, but maybe they can move past that in some way or another, but I definitely think it should be a big plot point in this season. Another thing that was said in this interview had to do with the structure of the season, which this is also something I did predict, which is that the episodes leading up to the crisis will be a different kind of storyline to the post-crisis. I actually also predicted that the main villain of the season will be a direct creation of the crisis, because they said, although the pre-crisis is probably going to have its own storyline and main villain, maybe Godspeed, maybe Thawne, we don't know yet, but apparently the post-crisis, episodes probably 10 to 22 or 23, how many episodes they're having this season, will directly deal with the consequences of Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I was technically right in that regard. This season will have two different storylines leading up to Crisis, which is titled Pre-Crisis, and going past Crisis, which is Post-Crisis, which I feel like that will work in the season's benefit. I didn't think they should have a villain up until the crossover. I thought that the main villain should be created by the crossover, and while I thought that villain would be somebody else than it's going to be, I thought it was going to be the Red Death, and it turns out that is impossible. I still think that this is a good idea for the structure of the season. Maybe the first 9 episodes or 8 episodes can have its own contained storyline, be as good as the Slabside storyline or the prison storyline on Arrow Season 7, and then the rest of the season can have a good main villain who maybe appears in every single episode, because it's really not that many episodes, it's only like 13 of them, so I think that would definitely work. So that brings me to the main villain. There was a lot of details about the main villain that were revealed, nothing too specific, but things that definitely did rule out a couple villains that we thought could be the big bad. Now, it turns out the main villain will be the most personal villain since Thawne, or at least that's what they're intending. Barry and the villain are going through the same circumstances, which I don't know what that means, but it's possible. It means they both lost their daughter, but that will bring them closer in a darker way than previous seasons, and probably make their rivalry maybe a little bit better. The main villain apparently is a male comic book character who has, this is very important, not been name dropped yet, which means Red Death, who was name dropped in the last season, very prominently in one of the episodes, is not going to be the main villain, unless maybe they just totally forgot about the name drop. But I think the fact that he said, the showrunner said specifically, this character has not been name dropped yet, is probably directly telling us that it isn't the Red Death, because the Red Death has been the prime candidate for the main villain of the season, and as it turns out, it's not him, and also can't be Godspeed, because technically he has been name dropped, and also he has appeared. It can't be Thawne, because also he has been name dropped, and it's not going to be the Reverse Flash. As it said, he's the most personal villain since Thawne, and going through the same circumstances, I doubt it doesn't make any sense to be Thawne. So that means it's going to be a new villain from the comics who has never been name dropped yet and could maybe have some personal connection to the Flash. And I think the most likely candidate, based off the fact that there really aren't a lot of villains they haven't used, at least villains with the potential to be the main villain of a season, and also have a personal connection to Barry. And to keep in mind, they could definitely create a personal connection to Barry in terms of the fact that they said same circumstances. This villain doesn't really fit that, but there isn't really any other villain that does. But I think the most likely candidate here right now is Malcolm Thawne, aka Cobalt Blue. Cobalt Blue, aka Malcolm Thawne, is the twin brother of Barry Allen, who was switched out in birth with one of the ancestors of Eobard Thawne, and his family had this some sort of power that he didn't have because he was adopted and he was from the Allens, but later in life he was able to get that power, and with this power he can project energy, he can construct energy creations, he can absorb power. Using that power absorption, he was able to run at superhuman speeds. He also has the power of healing, and while I do think that they could probably change it from twin brother just because it wouldn't really fit very well with the timeline, and also if they did twin brother, they could potentially just use Grant Gustin in the role, and they've already done that for a main villain, so I don't think they will do that again. But I think that Cobalt Blue, a comic book character who has never been mentioned on the show, has the potential to be the main villain of the season because he has a personal connection to Barry Allen, in which that he is his blood relative, he is his twin brother in the comics, but I'm assuming they're probably going to change that for the show. But this character, I think, has the potential to be a main villain of the season based off his abilities, based off his appearance, his costume. I definitely think, and also his backstory and personal connection to Barry, I think that he would make for a good main villain. And other than that, really, other than Cobalt Blue, I honestly can't think of anybody. I looked at all of his enemies. None of them really fit with the description. They're obviously going to change certain things about the villains, but really none of them, except for maybe at least a little bit Cobalt Blue, are going to work with the description. But I honestly don't really think it's Cobalt Blue. I think it's probably going to be someone else. But I think based off of what we've known, this is just the most likely candidate that I could find. So like I said, the season will be structured in a way that the episodes leading up to Crisis and the episodes after Crisis are separate, so that probably means the main villain will be created after the Crisis or will start appearing after the Crisis. They also said that the Team Flash will be dealing with the circumstances of Crisis on Infinite Earths right after the crossover ends, which means that the main villain will most likely be created directly because of the Crisis, which made me think that the Red Death would have fit, because, you know, the Crisis in the comics ended with the multiverse being combined into one universe, so maybe two characters from the multiverse were combined mistakenly. Maybe Barry Allen from a different universe, maybe Oliver Queen from a different universe, and that created the Red Death, or maybe even Bruce Wayne, which is that's very kind of similar to what is the comics. I mean, just those two characters being together, not really the universe and the multiverse being combined or anything. But I thought that would fit. In terms of Cobalt Blue, honestly, I don't know how that would fit with the Crisis, but I just do think that Cobalt Blue is the most likely candidate out of all these characters. And like I said, he doesn't need to be the twin of Barry Allen. They can definitely change some certain things about it. So maybe they can change things to make it fit with the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover and just be a direct consequence of that. And the last thing that was said about the season is that Eobard Thawne can return whenever. He's probably going to return a lot this season. I think that leading up to Crisis, he probably will be the secondary main villain of the season. And while I don't think the current version of Thawne will be appearing in Crisis because that wouldn't really fit, I do think that the previous version of Thawne, maybe hopefully played by Matt Letcher, probably kind of has to return in the Crisis, as that is the scenes and the storyline leading up to the fight between Barry and Thawne, where Thawne is trying to kill Nora. And it wouldn't make sense for the current Thawne to do that because he's already done that. It didn't work for him, and also he has no reason to do that. While the previous Thawne from before the season 1 Thawne's time period, I guess, did do that and has the potential and motivation to do that, and this would be the time to do that. So I don't think that the current Thawne will be appearing in the crossover, because that wouldn't really make any sense. I think that the old version will, with Thawne saying "see you in the Crisis" in the last season. He doesn't know that he will be showing up in this Crisis, or he doesn't think he will. He thought he already did. That's how we knew the Crisis happened. That's how we knew he is going to show up, because he already did, and that's what we're going to see in the crossover. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on all of these details in the comments down below. The season being more in heart than humor and spectacle. Season 6 beginning right after Season 5 ends. The season dealing with Barry and Iris dealing with Nora's death in the season. The season being structured in a way that the episodes leading up to Crisis and after Crisis are separate. And every detail we learned about the main villain. Most personal villain since Thawne, and they're going through the same circumstances. And it's not a villain that has ever been name dropped before, but it is a male comic book villain who is going to be debuting in the season. Let me know your thoughts on all of these things. Do you think Cobalt Blue will be the main villain based off what I've said? Let me know your thoughts, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.